Hi, fans of high-quality entertainment. I am with the author of this book, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono, Madeline Bocaro, and we did a live chat a few weeks back. If anyone is a fan of Yoko Ono, I highly recommend this book. It is excellent, and I'll have a link, if I remember, for our video chat on this book. But today, we are here to talk about Sparks. And I guess we both became fans the same year, 1974.
Yes, we did.
And the very first time I saw them was on the Midnight Special. Was that when you first saw them?
Yeah, they were on all the shows. They were on Don Kirshner in concert and Midnight Special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Midnight Special was first. Do you remember?
I don't recall which was first, but I do know those shows were, some of them started at 11:30 and the Midnight Special started at 1 a.m.
That's right too. Yeah.
And we stayed up, and I remember, my friend would watch these with me, and that's how we got to know all our favorite bands, because these weren't really on the radio in America. They had a lot of British bands on. I remember seeing Mott the Hoople, the New York Dolls even. Yeah. So I saw this, really late at night. And it was just so important. I had to call her. I didn't care if it woke up her parents, because back then those phone ringers were really loud and they ring through the hall. I'm like, I know we're going to get in trouble, but I just have to make sure he's watching. And I'm like, oh my God, did you see that? She's like, oh my God, we have to meet them and marry them. And I'm like,
and that hasn't happened yet, has it?
Not yet, but we're close.
So I remember from seeing the episode that Martin Mull was the host of that, I believe, right? Yeah. Do you remember any of the other acts that were on?
I don't remember who was on which show.
But I guess at some point,
linking and remembering and going out and buying the records. We'd save our lunch money so we could buy a record every week.
Yeah.
And when we wanted to go buy the Sparks albums, of course, we had our $4 each, and we got there and we expected to buy Kimono My House. And just when we picked it up, they came with a shopping cart and they were loading propaganda onto the shelves. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't get both. So Lisa's like, all right, we'll each get one. And we listened to them together for a week. And then the next week we both got the other album. And then I could stack them on top of each other all summer. Kimono side one, propaganda side one, Kimono side two.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. I think the full episode of that is, they have their YouTube channel now. So I think within the next year or so, we'll see the whole episode. But you have seen the Midnight Special clips of Sparks?
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Amazing quality. Eh?
Oh, yeah. So beautiful.
And the band was so good.
So good and so different. I mean, it was rock, but it was melodic. It was strange. The sounds of Ron's keyboard was really wonky and weird. Then you got, Russell, the perfect pop star, and then you've got Ron with the faces.
Yeah,
you're just so confused. Like you're 1 minute you're like, oh wow, and you're like, what? So it was just,
what am I watching here, and what am I hearing?
yeah. But even my parents, when I started playing the records, I had a music room downstairs and it was really great. I could blast anything I wanted, and they hated it all. But when I put on Sparks, they literally came in my room, opened the door, and said, what is this strange music? And I'm like, it's Sparks. And I said, well, sounds better than anything else you're playing.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, unfortunately, my best friend back in the mid-'70s, he supposedly hated Sparks, and he'd always bug me about them. But he ended up buying Introducing Sparks because he liked that album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this one girlfriend, and we did it all together, and we hadn't been to many concerts yet. And there weren't any music, few music magazines, but they were very dated. They were monthly, so if it said there was a concert, you probably missed it. Even with the fan club newsletter, once we bought that, it was, hard to catch the show. So it was a while before we found articles about them. And we were shocked to find out they were brothers even, because we didn't realize. And then we started we had this boring school life, and we just thought, well, this is our adventure out of this, you know. So we spent the next few weeks rewriting Sparks songs with our own lyrics about our stupid adventures in school. And we'd switch them in the hallway between classes, and my friend would draw pictures of Ron and Russell, and she would make a paper airplane and throw them in the middle of my chemistry class. Yeah. And the teacher would pick it up and unfold it and say, what the hell is this? And the same teacher once writes to me like a few years ago, because we kept in touch, and she said, you know, I was on holiday in LA, and you're not going to believe who was next to us at the table. Those skinny guys that you like, and boy, are they skinnier in person.
That's funny. When you sent me some photos, which I'll have in here at some point, but the one that really caught my eye was a ticket stub of Sparks with Nectar. Like, that's quite the, you know, I love Nectar. They're like a prog band, but quite a contrast between the two bands.
Yeah.
So were you at one of those shows? Or?
Yeah, I was at the Spark. It was the Capitol Theater, and Nectar opened for Sparks, I believe.
Really? Wow.
It's the one the black and white one that's on the internet now.
Yeah.
And it was a big beat tour. And it was the second time I was seeing, well, it was the fifth time I was seeing them on that tour. Yeah. And luckily the kids next to us were friends of Nectar, and they had backstage passes, and they let us use it and got to see Ron and Russell again. Yeah. But yeah, the first time we saw them was a few weeks after the late night TV show. We found in the New York Times a small ad that they were playing at the Palladium. Well, it was the Academy of Music at the time in New York City. It later became the Palladium, 14th Street. So we were 15, weren't allowed to go to the city by ourselves. Yep. So my mom and her sister said they would bring us. So like, oh, great. So we spent the next few weeks plotting and scheming our route backstage, and, you know, how we're obvious if they married us, we'd have so much more joy and hilarity in our lives. So we're just thinking what we could do, and we got fifth row seats. I remember that. And the city was a pretty scary place back then. Yeah. And my mom and her sister left us in the front, and they said, okay, after this show, you better be right here. No backstage shenanigans. Be right here. We're going to take you home. Like, yeah, okay, Ma, right? Okay. So we go to the show. It was fantastic. Russell's voice was flawless. We thought, okay, this isn't going to, be as good as what we saw, but it was spectacular. The crowd was pretty hyped up, I must say. Yeah. And I remember them doing Wonder Girl and Girl from Germany as well, because we went back and got those older albums. And so this was the start of us meeting many of our idols, because we were determined. So we didn't know what we were going to do, but we thought, okay, there's probably some kind of backstage pass. So we have badges, fan badges and things. So we brought a bunch of badges, and we brought different colors of construction paper and glue and scissors, because we figured it's going to be dark. So whatever the pass looks like, we'll just cut out that color in a circle, stick it on our thing, and we go, right? So we had a little sack with all our equipment. And years later, you could color copy the album cover and shrink it down and put it in a laminate, lanyard, and you're good to go. But that, but we did that. And I don't know if it helped sometimes. I think mostly people thought we were the children of the band or the crew or something. They just let us go. Because when I was 15, I looked like I was 10. So they just let us go. But in this case, we get to the stage door, and this kid is guarding the stairway. And my friend looks at him, and he's like, Billy? Lisa? Oh my God, it was her summer camp counselor.
Oh.
He's like, oh, you want to go upstairs? Like, yeah. So that was how we got backstage. And we get up there. There's a table with food and drinks, nothing elaborate, just, I don't know, sodas and things. And Linda Blair was there from The Exorcist. Yeah. And I'm telling you, our heads were spinning faster than hers. She was
your heads were spinning. I get it.
I'm like, how can people eat? How can people? And Ron and Russell were by themselves in a corner. nobody's going up to them because I don't know, everybody thinks, well, they're strange or whatever. But we went right there, we sat down next to them, and we started talking about our favorite songs. And I remember saying we liked Roger, and Ron said, yeah, I like that one too. But now I know, Russell wrote that, so he had to be like kidding, and he was giving us these crazy faces, and we're like, is he kidding? So we're like, yeah, we love that song. It sounds like a cuckoo clock falling apart. Like, how did you get that sound? He's like, well, it wasn't deliberate, but I'm glad you like it. So that was our first time we met them. And we're trying to act a little bit older than we wanted to seem intelligent. And suddenly this janitor yells upstairs, hey, Madeline, Lisa, there, your mother's down here. So we're like, oh my God, right? So Ron and Russell were laughing, and they're like, oh no, we're over busy here corrupting them, and look, their mothers are here. We're like, oh God. So they're like, all right, we were going to leave anyway, so you can walk out with us. So we get up to go down the stairs with them, and so the manager or somebody says, okay, so we're going to BK? They're like, yeah. And for us, this is a late night. We thought, oh, they're going to some exclusive club after this. We can't get in anyway. We're young. So we just, we leave. We get downstairs. We found out years later the after party was at Burger King.
Yeah.
So we get down there, and there's my mother and my aunt on the stage with all the amps and stuff being loaded into the trucks. And they're like, you kids, what are you? And the janitor's yelling at them, going, why are you letting your kids out at night like this with these rock stars? And I was like, what do you think we're doing here? We're taking them home. Craziness. So then they get engulfed in this wave of male mania. Like they get trying to get in the limo. Kids are all over the car. It was really wild.
Yeah, cool.
So that was fun. And then I remember in the cab ride home, my mother says, these women are crossing the street. And she says, those women are dressed like hookers. I'm like, Ma, they are hookers.
It's funny. And you were at those Bottom Line shows, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have the audio tape. I know I think it's on YouTube now too. Or maybe not, but the audio I've heard many times. And so you're the one that gave Russell the rose?
Yeah, I gave him
that's flowers. Cool, because I remember him saying thanks for the rose and whatever else he said.
No, he was turning it into like a bluesy song, and he was ad-libbing, and he was saying, these are probably poison roses.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then so we did get, our friends at school were like, you're never gonna meet them, shut up, this is ridiculous. And we come with our pictures and everything to school, showing it like we've got the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West here. Look what we did. And they're all like, oh, great. You went these weirdos. And they were all Grateful Dead heads. And they didn't want anything to do with us. We tried to put Come On My House on in the stereo in the record room there, and melt right off, and the Grateful Dead back on. So that was that. And then before the Bottom Line shows, we saw them again. It was 6 months after the first concert. Indiscreet came out. And they were at Philharmonic Hall. It was part of Lincoln Center. So this is like a really beautiful place. And so we're strategizing again what we're going to do. And we're like, what would Lucy and Ethel do? Like, what do we want and what do we need? Okay, we need front row tickets. We need to like meet their manager, get backstage again. So we cut school and we went to Island Records office in the city. And we told the receptionist, oh, yeah, we're friends of Sparks' manager. We want to call him, but we lost his number. So she gave it to us.
That's Joseph Fleury, right?
It was, at the time, it was John Hewlett.
Well, that's okay, right.
Yeah. So we were talking to the receptionist, and we're like, do you have any, like, posters or anything? And she's like, yeah, I have. She gave us all the propaganda posters, Indiscreet posters. She gave us this gigantic Indiscreet stand-up thing, and we went home on the subway with this thing. It was great. I still have it. And so we got all our stuff, and she says, you have tickets for tonight? And Lisa was going to say, yeah, and I nudged her. I like, no, not yet. She goes, oh, well, I have front row right here. She gives us front row tickets. So that was beautiful. And we went to the show early, like at 4:00. We wanted to just see if we could see them at the sound check, and we heard them in there. And after the thing, they came out and they spoke to us, and I'm like, Russell. He's like, oh, how's your mother? Oh my God. So that was cool. And then after that, it was probably the bottom line shows.
Yeah.
And that was tricky because now we're still like 16. We're not 18 yet.
Yeah.
And that was a club. And we wouldn't have been able to get in with regular tickets. So I wait till after hours, like really close to the show, like 7:00. And I called the bottom line and I said, this is Columbia Records. I have 2 last-minute names for the guest list, and this is for both nights, and it's all 4 shows. Okay. And I put my name and it worked. I couldn't believe it. So I went with a different friend this time because Lisa couldn't go. Yeah. And that was fantastic. 4 shows. But, we didn't see them again for a long time. They didn't come to New York.
Yeah.
So
I remember, for me, after like interior design came out, right?
Yeah.
And then, I wasn't getting the Sparks newsletter at that time. So for like 4 or 5 years, I seriously thought they were done. I didn't, because you never would hear about them in the magazines or anything. So at that time, did you know they were still active?
Yeah, I knew that because I was getting the newsletter, and then I did hear that they were doing the Psychic Girl stuff and whatever. But then my friend who was into disco, and he goes to the disco store, and he comes home and he says, "Look what I got at the disco store, and it's #1 in heaven." I'm like, no, don't tell me.
Sparks have gone disco.
No. But I'm like, no. So he gives me the album and I play it. I go, wait a minute, this isn't disco. This is Sparks. So it's fantastic. Yeah. And he used to go to these gay bars, and I went with him once, and they played #1 song in heaven on the system. And people tried to dance. I give them credit. They did try, and they gave up pretty quickly. Fast for them.
Yeah. But yeah, I was worried too, like hearing Sparks were making a disco album, and first time I heard it, it's like, I love it. Like, it's Sparks,
Yeah.
Terminal Jive, not as much. That was, I guess, the first time I was disappointed in a Sparks album.
Yeah, I like to feel
it just didn't have their personality.
Right. It was kind of, it wasn't them as much.
Yeah.
But then they were back with Angst in My Pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they came to a small club near my house, which now I was old enough so I could get in there. Yeah. But I did go in the afternoon and saw them, and they were on Saturday Night Live. Yeah. So that was great. And it was so great to see them again. Yeah. And then they were on for the next album, they were on the local news show Live at 5. And I remember Ron and Russell each reciting lyrics, and Ron read, "I wish I looked a little better," and Russell read, "All you ever think about is sex."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And then they opened for Rick Springfield.
Yeah.
And my friend took her young niece, and we went, and we had I think we were in the front row. It was Jones Beach, and we saw them, and then we were leaving, and we said, geez, these kids, I love Rick Springfield. So we went to the top of the stadium, to the last row, and we gave our front row tickets to 2 kids, and they were thrilled.
Yeah. Let's talk about their albums just for a minute. Like, so when Indiscreet came out, it was totally different from Kimono and Propaganda. Were you kind of surprised by that, or?
I didn't see it as so different. I just, and it was Tony Visconti, and I recognized that he put strings on there and whatever, and they're working with him, and it was fantastic. Yeah, I loved it all.
Yeah. Trying to think here. Yeah, about the Sparks Brothers documentary. What are your thoughts overall on it?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that they included so many fans and celebrity fans. And it was long. Don't get me wrong, it was long, and I'm sure some people bailed out, especially if they weren't a fan. but I think it all had to be in there. I mean, each person, I was interviewed 2 hours, and they, they could only use a few seconds for each person because it was so much. And I was hoping maybe there'd be another hour at least of, outtakes, but there was a concert with it that came with the DVD, so that was fantastic. It's like, I love that documentary. Thank God for Edgar.
Yeah. So some of the artists that you know or know of that are fans of Sparks that weren't in the documentary, are there any you could mention? Like Joe Elliott, I think, is a Sparks fan, right?
Oh, Joe's a huge Sparks fan. I met him backstage in, I think it was 2024, and we became really great friends.
Cool.
In fact, a good Joe story, when they did the 21 concerts and 21 nights in 2008. So I went to a lot of those shows and the sound checks and everything. And Joe was only off for 3 nights, and it was exactly the 3 nights he wanted to see: Kimono, Propaganda, and In the Street. So before the Kimono show, I located and invited Michi Hirota, the cover girl, the geisha on the cover, the girl on the right.
Yep, cool.
And she came with her daughter, and I told them, her daughter had no idea her mother had been on an album cover. It was crazy. So I said, okay, we're going to be in the lobby of our hotel. We're going to set you up, and you're going to sign autographs. She goes, me? Nobody, not me. I'm like, yeah, wait, you're going to be a superstar for the day. So I told the fans, come to my hotel in the lobby, 4:00. I have a special guest. So I'm sitting there with Michi and Joe, and they come in, they're like, oh my God, you got Joe Elliott. I'm like, no. They're looking at this now. She's an older Japanese woman, right? And I had the cover color printed out and on the table. So you see them looking down at the cover, and they look up at her, and then they realize who she is, and they went wild.
Yeah, that's
she
cool.
Was signing autographs all day.
Yeah, wow. Any other, what about, I know Iggy Pop a bit, right? Has he ever mentioned Sparks at all?
Iggy played actually on his radio show. He played Lawnmower. He gets a kick out of them.
Oh, that's really cool. Good. Yeah, I just like to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ian Hunter, every time I see him, he's like, "Oh, Sparks."
That's funny.
Mick Ronson, of course, he almost joined the band.
Yeah.
And there's those Big Beat demos with him. They're not really demos; they're just like rehearsals with him playing with Hilly Michaels on drums. And Hilly's in the film, in the documentary. He was a huge fan before he became the
drummer. That was cool. Yeah. And then Weird Al. I don't think I knew that he was a Sparks fan for quite a few years, but that's cool.
Yeah, he comes to the gigs. There's so many. They were all in the documentary. I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of others.
And Flea's a fan of Sparks.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. So how did you've said that you kind of know Ron and Russell fairly well. So tell me a bit about that, like how you got to know them a bit.
Well, when I got my first computer, first thing I did was search for Sparks, because I had been getting the newsletter, but I wanted to find people maybe who other fans. And so I found some kind of I think it was an AOL message board, and fans from all over the world are writing in, oh, I wish I could see them. I've never seen them. Or I'm from South Africa. I'm from Chicago. And we all started chatting, and I started putting this little story online about all the times I've met them and got backstage. And they were all saying, oh, we should do a gathering of the fans. So these 2 guys arranged it in Chicago, and we all came, and they arranged for Ron and Russell to call in so we could talk.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I put a message on the board, does anyone want to travel with me from New York? So this guy wrote back, yeah, I'm from New Jersey, I'll go with you. And this is now my boyfriend of 30 years, Frank. I don't know if you met him.
Cool.
So we went and we spoke to Ron and Russell on the phone, and it was supposed to be a 30-minute call, but it went on for like an hour and a half. It was great. It was so nice to talk to them. So then I put this story up on the thing, and I get a letter in the mail from Russell. And he said, we really liked your writing, and we went through all fan club mail to find your address. We want you to start writing the newsletter for us. And I was like, okay, I mean, this is an honor. Fine.
Yeah.
So I started writing did it for about 20 years. And I only stopped because I was promoting my Yoko book. I stopped a couple of years ago, but I still write for it sometimes. So, so since then he's gotten me, he's like, all right, well, we're playing in England. Well, they did gratuitous sax and I couldn't go. My mother had passed away that year. And then the next time they played was more like 2001 with Plagiarism.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're playing in England for the first time in decades, like come to the show. And, so that's when I first met them again. And, they're just wonderful. They're all Sparks all the time.
Yeah.
It's like hanging out with Sparks fans when you're with them, this talking about their latest thing, and they're really funny.
Yeah.
And, I love them.
Yeah. So did you ever get to meet their mom?
Briefly at a concert. Yeah, not too much, but she did write to me and say, well, first I used to ask when I was a kid, I'd say, look, my mother had to write the checks for me, right? Because you had to subscribe and pay yearly by check for this newsletter.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had to ask my mother, and she'd give me a dirty look every time. I said, isn't there like a 99-year membership? You can just write one check. And she wrote me back laughing. No, just still write the check every year. And then finally, she wrote me a note and said, you have a lifetime membership. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Really sweet.
Yeah. What I'm kind of interested in too with Ron and Russell, nothing about their personal lives, I don't care, right? Mm-hmm. But music-wise, what difference, if you know, between them for what they like music-wise, for bands and artists?
I think they have very similar tastes,
yeah.
They both like a certain amount of rap. They both like a certain amount of classical, Once I was asking Russell his favorite singer, and he surprisingly said Tom Waits. And I was like, wow, what an opposite, raw voice, but he loves him and he loves Kate Bush. And they, back in the 70s, they admired the sound of the Bowie records, and that's why they wanted Mick Ronson and almost got him, But they're very similar. They're like two minds in one,
Yeah, and it's so nice to see, like, especially last year with the Hollywood Bowl, and then the in the UK, the Albert Hall.
Yeah, we went to 8 of those shows. We went to all the 2 at Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah,
Hollywood Bowl. I mean, it's like, wow. All my life I've been trying to tell people this is how big they should be, and finally it's happening.
Yeah.
Luckily they're alive to see it,
Yeah. When they did their solo tour, I saw them in Toronto in a small club, and it was like maybe 400 people. And, and at the end they're saying they'll be back and all that. And I was thinking, this is the last time I'm going to see them, right? I really thought. And then the next time they're playing to like 2,000 people, 3,000, like, so nice.
It's so nice. Every time I saw them, I thought it would be the last time.
Yeah.
And now it's so great.
Yeah. So what would be some of your like, if you could, your 5 favorite Sparks albums?
Okay. So, when you're a kid, it's like the most important thing is the ones that are out.
I'll hold it up.
So, but I love the first 5,
Yeah.
I really do. And that's how it's going to be. But amongst my top songs, I've got a few in there from Latte. I've got some in there from Steady Drip. I mean, I wouldn't say it's amazing for something so new and to come out so many decades later to be amongst my top of all time.
I think right now, this is my favorite Sparks album.
Yeah,
like the last 2 were great. I love them. But this is just, I don't know. I've played this so much more than the previous 2. And
Well, what I loved is, so when I discovered them, I was 15, 1974. So I don't care about love songs or the blues or lyrics about real life, right?
Yeah.
So they were singing about things you'd never even think of. You know, Einstein's parents, sneezing, sperm cells.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And like the equator.
Yeah.
And not liking Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, thank God it's not Christmas. I think that's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Because it's got a little of everything that I like about them. But the funniest thing is that like 8-second keyboard solo.
That's the greatest piano solo ever. And I love in concert.
In the time of, you know, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes, and all these prog bands going rampant. So that's what I love. And
then he extends it in concert, right?
In concert, doubles it. Yeah,
bars.
So good. so good. But the thing about that Christmas, which I found out later, so I was going to interview Joey Ramone because the Ramones were going to cover Nothing to Do at one time.
Yeah.
And Joey was saying that Thank God It's Not Christmas and I Want to Be Sedated are about that summer in England when everything is closed. And unless you live there and have relatives, you're wandering the streets and it's black. Which why there's nothing to do. So that was funny. And then Nothing to Do on Big Beat, you know, Joey resonated with that. But before I got to interview him, he passed away. It was just so sad.
Yeah, but he was another fan of Sparks. That was cool.
Yeah. And when they did that at the at Meltdown, you know, Morrissey had them do Kimono for Meltdown. And what year was it? Like 2004 on an anniversary.
Yeah.
And they did that. And I remember they had the gong. I'm like, oh my God, they have the gong. This is great for the end. And then Tommy hits it and it like fell over and luckily she caught it in time. I'm like, wow, I wonder if Queen had gong troubles.
Yeah.
So, and then we saw the 40th anniversary of it with an orchestra, right? The Barbican and in LA. And they had glockenspiels and strings. It was just magical.
Yeah.
And that concert, so this program, I had written this for the anniversary concerts.
Wow.
Nice. London and LA, and it completely sold out. And it's a book, really, the whole story of the album, and I don't know how to work backwards.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, it was really fun to do, and to put pictures in there that we've never seen.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was fun. And then I did this other one for the 40th of Propaganda, Indiscreet, and Big Beat.
Nice.
That's the front, and that was the back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah. So between Ron and Russell, who would you say, you have to choose one, who do you say is the funniest? You know, just when talking to, and or do you think they're pretty, are they similar with, I guess they must be similar with their humor too, right?
Here's the thing. They're both they have a dry humor, they're very sarcastic.
Yeah.
And they're very self-depreciating, even though they think highly of themselves, of course.
Of course.
But, you know, they're very funny.
Yeah.
But you have to say Ron because his face, I mean, you don't know when he's kidding. Like you sometimes, you know. Yeah, he's just hilarious. And he's a big kid. They both are, but Ron more so.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah. Another question, you might not have the answer for it, but I'm just curious. Do you know if they've ever had pets, like cats or dogs? Or...
I don't think so.
They're not into...
No, well, they're always on tour. They're not going to...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No.
So, tell us also about, I'll have a link for everything and your book and everything, but tell us about your website and all the different stories you have on there, because it's quite interesting.
Okay, so I started a music blog, like 20-something years ago, and it's all my musings, adventures, and, you know, album reviews, album retrospectives. I have themed playlists on there with details, you know, all these fun facts about the songs, like songs about winds, Father's Day songs, you know, just a running theme. I have a lot of Sparks articles, a lot of articles on all the bands I love, a lot on the Stooges, like Alice Cooper, Bowie, Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, all the glam rock, punk rock, Ramones, Patti Smith, Blondie, Talking Heads. I spent a lot of time after the glam and seeing all the shows I saw, going to CBGB every weekend and seeing all the new bands, Talking Heads, Television, and all that stuff. So I had a passion for it. I met a lot of the people, stayed friendly with them, interviewed a lot of them because I was writing for this magazine called CMJ at the time, which was College Media Journal. So that's all on MadelineX.com.
Yeah. Okay. I'll have a link for that. That's cool. Yeah. I think that's about it. I don't know if I have any more questions, but yeah, what other bands have had an over 50-year career being like pretty consistent with, they've had their ups and downs, but being pretty consistent with their albums.
Mm-hmm. I compare them, like, there's no comparison, but like Iggy Pop, he just stayed true to himself.
Yeah.
Blew off the fact that, people threw garbage at him and just kept it up. And now look, he's revered, he's appreciated. It just takes time. And when you're genuine and sincere and you believe in yourself, you're doing good work.
Yeah.
Well, just don't stop.
I don't know if you've seen the clip on YouTube of, I guess Sparks are backstage and they're waiting for David Bowie to come out. Have you seen that or not?
Oh,
and anyway, Ron and Russell, they look pretty nervous or a little, I'm just wondering if David Bowie ever mentioned Sparks or.
I never heard him mention that.
No. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Do you know if either Ron or Russell were fans of like Captain Beefheart, Frank Zappa, or?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, they were in LA and they knew about Zappa and that scene. I know they were affiliated with the GTOs, who Zappa produced, whatever, but they didn't mention that. No.
I don't think they're necessarily fans of prog rock.
Oh, no.
I can just kind of picture them not being fans. Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah, it was nice to talk to you. And we can do this again sometime because I'll think up more stuff to talk about. But thank you. And I hope everybody checks out her website. And also, like I said, her excellent book on Yoko Ono. Tell us a little bit about this.
So that is something I wrote because Yoko gets a bad rap. There's so many lies written about her. She's an amazing person. Another one who was very committed to her work, kept going despite all adversity, all prejudice and hatred, which is totally unwarranted based on lies. So I had a correspondence with her. I met her. I spent a lot of time with her, and I was like, no, this is too beautiful a story. It needs to be told. Yeah. So I put it all together, and it's highly acclaimed, and people love it. So I'm so happy I did it.
And I know that Sparks did the remix of Give Me Something for one of Yoko's remix albums.
Right.
Have they said anything about Yoko's music to you, or?
No, they were just given the track, and it's one of the few that she allowed them to replace her vocal. It's her; she's on there, but Russell is on there multiple times, layered on, and it's fantastic. And it's a brainy orchestration by Ron, and there's timpani on there, and it's wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, she let them run with it.
And Sean Lennon, I noticed, follows Sparks on.
Oh yeah, he's a big fan.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's supporting my book also.
Yeah, I hope to interview Sean Lennon someday. And who knows, Madeline, maybe you could, next time you talk to Ron and Russell's, tell them next year when they have their new album out, I would love to interview them on my channel. Just talk about music.
I'll mention it.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure they know all about me, right?
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Talk to you later. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.